Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we re-diving into a topic that is as uncomfortable as it is real. The psychological unraveling of narcissistic women over 40, and why this crisis often leaves broken families in its wake. We're not here to shame anyone. We're here to understand what happens when validation fades, when the spotlight dims, and when a woman who once thrived on external admiration begins to confront the silence of middle age. You see, narcissism feeds on one thing above all else: attention. For decades, these women built their identity around being admired, pursued, envied. Every compliment was proof of power. Every admirer was evidence of worth. But when the mirror starts to change and the attention slows, the illusion begins to crack. What follows isn't just sadness, it's panic. Because for a narcissist, aging isn't natural, it's existential. Imagine spending your entire adult life believing your beauty, your charm, your desirability are your greatest strengths. Then one morning, you wake up and realize the currency you've always traded in is losing value. The reflection in the mirror feels unfamiliar. The world seems colder. You don't just see wrinkles, you see irrelevance. That fear doesn't just bruise the ego, it detonates it. And that explosion hits everyone close. At 25, admiration comes effortlessly. A glance, a smile, a new dress, instant validation. But at 40, that same attention must be chased, crafted, fought for. And when it doesn't come, rage begins to replace confidence. The same woman who once felt adored now feels invisible. And invisibility, to a narcissist, feels like death. It's the collapse of identity. The moment she realizes she was never in love with people, only with their reflection of her. That's when the rewriting begins. She starts to resent everything that once gave her stability. Her marriage, her children, her home. They become symbols of her aging, her entrapment, her fading youth. Instead of gratitude, she feels suffocated. She tells herself she's finding herself. But what she's really doing is running from the reality that her power was built on temporary things. Attention, novelty, desirability. All fading currencies of youth. And that panic manifests in strange ways. She might become restless, suddenly obsessed with appearance, fitness, and youth. Or she might become emotionally erratic, angry one day, distant the next. It's not that she's lost her mind, it's that she's lost her reflection. The validation that once came so easily now requires effort, and effort feels beneath her. So she lashes out. Not at strangers, but at the people closest to her. The husband becomes the first target. The same man who once adored her now represents everything she's trying to escape: routine, predictability, time. She looks at him and sees not love, but a reminder of the years she can't get back. And so begins the slow withdrawal. Fewer smiles, colder eyes, less affection. She convinces herself that she's outgrown him, when in truth she's just terrified of growing old with him. Then come the justifications. She starts talking about how she deserves to be happy, how she needs to find herself again. But happiness, in her language, means excitement. It means attention. It means being desired again. So she seeks validation wherever it can still be found: at the gym, online, in the compliments of men who see her as she wishes to be, not as she is. And for a brief moment, the illusion returns. But illusions are expensive. Every new admirer, every flirtation, every reckless choice buys her only a few seconds of the high she's chasing. The crash that follows is brutal, emptiness sharper than before. She doesn't realize that what she's fighting isn't age, it's absence. The absence of authenticity, of self-worth that doesn't depend on being wanted. And that kind of emptiness is a hunger that devours everything it touches. This is where families begin to fracture. The children sense her distance. The husband feels her resentment. The warmth of the home turns cold. Every conversation becomes a performance. Every silence, a weapon. She isn't leaving to find love. She's leaving to find attention. But attention can't replace connection. It never could. And when the chase begins, she doesn't just destroy her family. She erases the stability that once made her feel safe. Once the restlessness takes hold, reinvention begins. She changes her hair, her clothes, her social circle. Suddenly, she's not the same person anymore. But this isn't transformation, it's disguise. Reinvention is her way of escaping accountability, of pretending that she's evolving when she's really unraveling. She starts to talk about freedom, independence, new beginnings. Yet beneath every declaration of empowerment lies a trembling fear of fading from relevance. Social media becomes her new mirror. It offers the illusion of admiration without the vulnerability of real connection. A single photo, a compliment, a heart emoji. It's enough to create the temporary high she's starving for. But the dopamine fades fast, and with it, her sense of identity. She scrolls endlessly, comparing herself to other women, other lives, other timelines that seem more vibrant than her own. It's not inspiration. It's self-destruction in pixels. Modern culture feeds this unraveling like oxygen to a fire. Everywhere she turns, she's told she deserves more. More excitement, more attention, more validation. Society sells her the fantasy that happiness lies just one decision away, one trip, one affair, one escape. And so she runs faster, chasing an illusion of fulfillment that was never meant to last. The irony? The more she runs from aging, the older she feels inside. Her friends begin to change too. She starts surrounding herself with people who mirror her denial. Divorced women who speak in the language of self-justification. Influencers who preach empowerment while quietly battling loneliness. They become her echo chamber. Together they rewrite morality into marketing. You only live once, they say. Follow your truth. But her truth is fractured, built on the shifting sands of vanity and fear. The husband becomes the villain in her new story. In every retelling, he's the problem. He's too controlling, too boring, too comfortable. She convinces herself that leaving him is an act of courage. But in reality, it's an act of escape. From her reflection, her responsibility, her own choices. It's easier to destroy the life she built than to admit she no longer knows who she is without validation. She starts to reframe the past, rewriting history to fit her new identity. The marriage that once felt solid becomes a prison in her narrative. The husband's kindness becomes weakness. His patience becomes indifference. Every good memory is repainted as manipulation. She does this because she can face the truth, that the problem isn't in what her life became, but what she refused to grow into. And as the story evolves, her children become collateral damage. She tells herself they'll understand someday, that they'll see her as brave. But children don't understand abandonment wrapped in empowerment quotes. They see the empty chair at dinner, the tension in the room, the slow erosion of stability. They learn that love can vanish overnight, and that self-discovery sometimes means leaving the people who needed you most. Soon, her rebellion becomes her prison. The thrill fades. The compliments stop meaning anything. The attention feels shallow, even irritating. She looks around and realizes she traded something real for something fleeting. But pride won't let her go back. Narcissism can't admit error. It can only double down. So she keeps pretending, keeps posting, keeps smiling through the exhaustion of keeping the illusion alive. Behind closed doors, though, the truth is different. The makeup comes off. The phone is silent. The house is quiet. And in that stillness, she feels the full weight of everything she's lost. She'll never admit it out loud, but regret lingers like smoke. Because deep down, she knows. Attention was never love, and excitement was never meaning. What she destroyed was the only thing that could have anchored her through this storm. Family. And yet, she'll keep performing, because the performance is all she has left. The tragedy of a narcissistic woman over 40 isn't a T that she ages, it's S that she refuses to. She trades wisdom for validation, growth for rebellion, love for attention. And in doing so, she doesn't just lose her family, she loses herself. What began as a desperate chase for relevance ends as a quiet collapse into loneliness, masked by a smile that fools everyone but her. At first, she tries to convince herself that she's free. The silence feels strange but thrilling, like standing on a cliff with the wind in her face. She tells herself she's never felt more alive. But freedom without stability is chaos disguised as liberation. It's the high before the crash. And that crash comes hard. When the phone stops ringing, when the attention fades, when the world moves on without her. What begins as empowerment soon turns into isolation. The friends who cheered her rebellion start disappearing one by one. They have their own lives, their own dramas. The constant validation she once got from them now goes to someone newer, younger, more interesting. And that's when the panic returns. Because without an audience, the performance loses purpose. Without being watched, the narcissist begins to disappear. She looks back at the man she left behind, the one she accused of holding her back. And for a moment, she feels something that terrifies her. Envy. He looks calm now. He's rebuilding. The kids laugh when they're with him. There's peace in that house. The kind of peace she mistook for boredom. She sees it from afar, and it burns. Because she realizes that while she was chasing excitement, he was quietly becoming whole. Her attempts to reconnect often come disguised as nostalgia. I was just thinking about the old days. I miss the family dinners. But these messages aren't about love. They're about validation. She wants proof that she still matters, that she can still stir emotion in you. But when you don't respond, or when you respond with calm indifference, she feels something she hasn't felt in years. Powerlessness. And for a narcissist, that's unbearable. The emotional unraveling starts subtly. Sleepless nights, sudden anger, tears that come out of nowhere. She'll tell herself it's just stress or loneliness, but what she's really feeling is exposure. Without her web of manipulation, she has to face the raw truth. Her worth was never internal. It was borrowed from the admiration of others. And now, with that admiration gone, there's nothing left to anchor her. She tries to fill the void again. New hobbies, new partners, new distractions. But nothing fits. The new man doesn't adore her the same way. The new friends don't idolize her like before. The thrill she's chasing now feels forced, artificial. She's starting to realize that the excitement she once mistook for happiness was really anxiety dressed up as passion. And once the anxiety fades, she's left with silence. And silence feels like punishment. She begins to see her children differently too. Their distance cuts deep, but instead of guilt, she feels resentment. They no longer look at her the same way. Their trust has been replaced by quiet caution. They love her, but they've learned. They've seen the chaos up close, and every time they pull away, she feels another piece of her influence slip away. She can't control them anymore, and that loss hits harder than anything else. There are moments, brief flashes, when she almost admits it, when she almost whispers to herself, "I ruined everything." But pride is louder than truth. So she swallows it down, dresses up, and posts another smiling picture. The caption reads something like "New Beginnings" or "Learning to Love Myself." But even she can feel it now, that hollow echo underneath the words. Because deep down, she knows it's not growth. It's survival. At this point, her reflection has become her worst enemy. The mirror no longer lies. The woman staring back isn't the goddess she once believed herself to be. She's human, flawed, aging, tired. But she can't accept that. Narcissism doesn't allow for humility. To accept reality would mean acknowledging every lie she built her life upon. So she keeps performing, even though the stage lights are dimming, and the audience has long gone home. And this is where the tragedy truly unfolds. Not in the shouting, not in the leaving, but in the silence after it all. She's alone, scrolling through memories of a life she destroyed trying to outrun time. She'll blame others, circumstances, anyone but herself. But late at night, when the mask finally falls, she'll feel the truth creeping in. She didn't lose everything because she grew tired of love. She lost everything because she grew terrified of herself. The facade starts to crumble faster now. Her confidence becomes erratic. One moment she's radiant, unstoppable, and the next she's consumed by bitterness. You'll see her smiling in photos that don't reach her eyes, laughing in ways that sound rehearsed. The glow she tries to project is artificial light, powered by desperation. She's not chasing happiness anymore. She's running from emptiness, and no amount of likes or attention can fill that void. She begins to obsess over the past, but only selectively. The version of her life that fits the story she tells herself. She was unappreciated, unloved, misunderstood. This narrative becomes her last defense against accountability. Because if she admits she destroyed her own peace, the guilt might swallow her whole. So, she doubles down on the illusion. I had no choice. I just wanted to be happy. But that happiness remains a ghost she can't catch. Money starts to matter more now. Independence sounds noble, but it's expensive. The comfort she once dismissed suddenly feels like something she should have cherished. The bills, the loneliness, the lack of safety net, it all adds up. And slowly, she realizes that the security she traded for freedom wasn't a cage. It was love and structure, stability in disguise. But by the time she sees it, the bridge is already ash and smoke. Sometimes she'll try to reconnect. Not out of love, but nostalgia. The comfort of familiarity becomes tempting. She'll test the waters with messages that sound reflective, almost gentle. I've been thinking about how things ended. But her motives are still tangled in self-interest. She doesn't miss the person. She misses the version of herself she got to be in that person's presence. She misses being adored, being forgiven, being relevant. Meanwhile, her new relationships crumble faster. The men she attracts now see through the charm sooner. They sense the emotional volatility, the hidden rage, the deep insecurity wrapped in confidence. What once felt magnetic now feels chaotic. And with every failed romance, her desperation grows. She begins to realize that the common denominator isn't them, it's her. But that realization, though fleeting, burns like acid. Her children, now older, start creating emotional distance. They love her, but they guard themselves. They've seen too much, felt too much. They've watched her rewrite the past and turn their home into a battlefield. And now they've learned the cost of loving someone who can't face their own reflection. That silent withdrawal wounds her ego, but she won't admit why it hurts. Because to do so would mean acknowledging her failure as both mother and woman. The nights become the hardest. The stillness she once romanticized now feels like judgment. Every quiet hour whispers reminders of what she's lost. Trust, stability, purpose. The chaos she once blamed on others was, in truth, her own creation. But facing that truth would mean surrendering the illusion of power she has clung to her entire life. And surrender is something she was never built to do. The rage returns not outwardly this time, but inward. It's the kind that doesn't explode, it erodes. The confidence, the vanity, the smug certainty, each begins to rot from within. She might overwork, overdrink, overshare. Anything to drown out the gnawing sound of accountability creeping closer. But guilt has a strange persistence. It doesn't need to shout, it just waits for silence. And silence, for her, is unbearable. In rare moments of clarity, she wonders if it was worth it. The rebellion, the validation, the destruction. But self-awareness doesn't bring peace. It brings pain. Because in that clarity, she sees the faces of the people she hurt. The husband who tried to love her through chaos, the children who still hoped she'd come back home. That's the price of a midlife built on ego. When the applause stops, all that remains are echoes of what she broke. And yet she'll still tell herself she's fine. She'll call it freedom. She'll call it growth. But deep down, she knows she's not liberated. She's lost. The woman who once commanded every room now walks through life searching for meaning in mirrors that no longer lie. And when she looks into them, she doesn't see power. She sees the reflection of someone who once had everything, and mistook love for limitation. Eventually, every illusion reaches its expiration date. The thrill fades. The admirers move on. The filters stop hiding the years. And for the first time, she's forced to sit with herself. No distractions, no validation, no applause. This is where the crash truly happens. Not in the loss of a man or a marriage, but in the collapse of identity. Because without the role of being desired, she doesn't know who she is anymore. Regret begins to creep in quietly. It doesn't announce itself. It shows up in the smallest moments. In the smell of her child's old bedroom. In a song from a family vacation. In the sound of laughter from a home she no longer belongs to. She tells herself she's moved on, but the truth is, she's haunted. Not by what she lost, but by how easily she threw it away. Sometimes, she tries to make amends. She'll reach out to her kids, to her ex, to old friends. Her words might sound sincere, but they're heavy with nostalgia instead of accountability. She doesn't apologize for the damage. She apologizes for the discomfort. Because true remorse would mean admitting she wasn't the victim of her life story. She was the author of its downfall. And narcissism doesn't allow that kind of honesty. Her friends, the ones who once fueled her rebellion, start to fade too. Some are lost in their own chaos. Others have found stability again. She scrolls through their pictures and feels a sting of confusion. How did they rebuild while she still feels stuck? The answer is simple. They faced what she refused to face. They stopped chasing youth and started accepting truth. And truth, no matter how heavy, always leads to peace. By now, she's tired. Not just physically, but spiritually. The endless pursuit of admiration has drained her. The makeup, the charm, the performance, it all feels exhausting. She looks in the mirror and sees a woman who has been fighting her own reflection for years. And in that moment, a small, painful clarity begins to form. She was never trying to stay young. She was trying to stay wanted. And that realization cuts deep, because it exposes the entire lie. The belief that being desired equals being valuable. It was never true. Real value doesn't fade with time, it deepens. But she traded depth for surface, longevity for thrill, love for attention. Now she's left with the one thing she spent her whole life avoiding: silence. And in that silence, every truth she buried begins to speak. She remembers the man who stayed faithful while she drifted, the kids who waited at the window when she didn't come home, the moments of love she dismissed as boring because they weren't dramatic. And suddenly the tragedy becomes clear. It wasn't time that took her joy. It was pride. Pride dressed as empowerment. Vanity dressed as freedom. And now all she can do is stare at the ruins and call them lessons. For some, this is the moment of awakening. A rare few find humility in the ashes. They start to rebuild quietly, not for admiration, but for peace. They learn to love in silence, to age with grace, to trade validation for wisdom. But for most, the cycle simply repeats. New faces, new promises, the same hunger. Because without confronting the wound beneath the ego, the craving for attention never dies. It only mutates. Meanwhile, the people she once discarded keep growing. The husband heals, the children thrive, and the family she left behind learns peace again. Life continues without her drama, and that truth is what finally breaks her. Because deep down, she always believed she was irreplaceable. But the world moved on. And nothing shatters a narcissist's illusion more brutally than realizing life doesn't revolve around them anymore. So, what's the final lesson here? It is not that beauty fades, or that women shouldn't to grow older. It is that anyone, man or woman, who builds their worth on external validation will eventually face collapse. The mirror always wins, the applause always fades. But those who build love on loyalty, gratitude, and humility, they don't just survive time, they master it. Because peace, not attention, is the real fountain of youth. If this story resonated with you, remember, it's not about blaming anyone. It is about recognizing how fragile the ego becomes when it's built on things that time can take away. True strength is not in staying young, it's in staying real. Like, share, and subscribe for more insight into the psychology behind human behavior. And above all, protect your peace.